Hello and welcome to This Week in India Science on the Nature India podcast. I am Subhra Priyadarshini. This week we bring you three stories that speak to our changing world and how we choose to understand it. We'll start with a look inward at the state of science journalism itself. Why is it so often reactive, underfunded, and seen as an optional, a side dish in newsrooms when the stakes have never been higher? Then we head to space, where ISRO and NASA have just launched their first Earth mapping satellite together. It's a big step for science diplomacy and for the way we track climate change, disaster zones, and land use. And finally, back on ground to Kolkata, where researchers have created glowing nanoparticles that hunt down cancer cells with striking precision. Let's dive in. Do you remember the ivermectin saga during the early COVID years? A drug meant for parasites, suddenly billed as a miracle cure. Every media house had stories about it, and it spread quite fast, fueled by misinterpreted studies and, of course, a political spin. By the time the science caught up, the damage was done. This was not just an editorial slip up, this was a symptom of a deeper failure. Too often, science reporting is treated as a luxury, not a necessity. A press release lands in the inbox, a generalist reporter writes a quick piece, but the context, the nuance, the doubt, the critique all get flattened. Now, make no mistake, editors still want breakthroughs, but will not invest in the science beat. That's despite evidence that science stories consistently rank among the most read. Newsrooms don't lack interest in science stories, they lack incentives. That's what I heard speaking to colleagues from around the world while writing a piece on the state of science journalism last week. We have more science stories than ever before, from AI policy to lunar missions, but too few trained editors to guide them. And when deadlines loom, nuance gets replaced by hype. A global science journalism report found some time back that most science reporters don't think the field is in crisis, but they do feel the pressure. More projects, more hours, and less support, especially for women and especially in the global south. So, what can be done? For one, the editors and journalists I spoke to said we have to stop being reactive. Science only gets attention during crises, floods, pandemics, heat waves, and then it vanishes again. But the bigger stories like climate change or, say, antibiotic resistance don't fit the news cycle. They are slow, creeping, easy to ignore. And then there's the education gap. Most editors, especially in smaller rural outlets, are uncomfortable with science. They see it as other. That filters into how stories get told or don't get told at all. There are access barriers too, as I heard. Training programs are expensive, internships are unpaid, and if English isn't your first language, the hurdles only grow taller. So, what's the way forward? Science editors say we need to train not just science reporters but editors, build institutional support, restore science desks, make science part of everyday journalism, not just the special report. And yes, fund it. Public support, philanthropic backing, academic partnerships. Without these, we'll keep losing science reporters to better paying beats. Because when the next crisis hits, and it will, we can't afford to be caught off guard again. Read an explainer on the state of science journalism and why newsrooms must take note of the beat on Nature India this week. Last week, NASA and ISRO launched a joint satellite mission that promises to transform how we monitor our planet. It's called NISAR, the NASA ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar Mission, and it's now orbiting Earth every 12 days, capturing detailed snapshots of the ground beneath us. Not just pictures, but radar images so precise they can detect shifts in land surface down to centimeters. Landslides, earthquakes, glaciers, forests absorbing carbon. It's all there. Here's the cool part. NISR is the first satellite to operate two kinds of radar frequencies, L-band and S-band, in tandem. The L-band can see through tree canopies, which helps during floods or in forests. The S-band gives sharp detail over bare ground. Put together, they allow scientists to track everything from Himalayan glacier melt to urban subsidence. Manavendra Saharia at IIT Delhi is building AI tools with ISRO to process this data in real time. He says NISAR could be a game changer for flood mapping, especially during the monsoon when cloud cover blocks optical satellites. And glaciologists are excited too. The satellite will help monitor snow wetness and short-term changes in glacier flow, critical for forecasting water supplies and avalanche risks. The satellite was more than a decade in the making, and it's not just a scientific milestone, it's a diplomatic one too. ISRO handled the spacecraft launch and the S-band radar. NASA contributed the L-band radar, antenna systems, and funding. Together, they've built a global data platform that will be open access, meaning climate researchers, disaster managers, and policy planners around the world will benefit. As V. Narayanan, ISRO's chairman, said, the potential applications are huge. Read Sahana Ghosh's report on the launch on Nature India this week. Now in Kolkata, researchers at the Indian Association for the Cultivation of Science have created tiny glowing particles that could help target breast and cervical cancer cells with greater precision and fewer side effects. These nanoparticles are built from molecules called naphthalene dialimides. Alone, they don't do much, but when coaxed into forming tiny spheres about 1,000 times smaller than a human hair, they start to glow a bright orange. The team, led by Prasanta Kumar Das and Afreen Zaman, coated the particles with a protein called transferrin. Why transferrin? Because it naturally binds to receptors that are overexpressed in many cancer cells, but not in healthy ones. Then they loaded the particles with paclitaxel, a common chemotherapy drug. And here's the beauty: when tested in lab cell cultures, these nanoparticles released the drug slowly over 2 days and more effectively killed cancer cells than free paclitaxel, all while sparing healthy cells. Their glow makes them easy to track, opening up the possibility of using them as imaging tools, not just drug carriers. It's still early stage research, but it's a step towards more targeted, less toxic cancer treatments. So, from newsroom blind spots to radar satellites, and from policy gaps to glowing nanoparticles, Science This Week reminds us that how we see the world matters, and how we tell those stories matters just as much. That's all for this episode of This Week in India Science. I am Subhra Priyadarshini. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with more. Until then, tune into the Nature India podcast's past episodes on your favorite podcast platform.